Hello everybody! Neffertity here, and I think it's about time that I started producing actual YouTube videos again. Not reposting TikToks, not doing more of my little short snippets, but working on actually producing YouTube videos again. And I've had quite a few people requesting this one, being how on earth do you paint 3D models? And you know what? I don't quite think that my flat stills work for this kind of a video, so let's go ahead and change it up and do something a little bit different, shall we? Ta-da! So, I actually have a 3D model of Neffertiti now, and it's really, really cool that I do. I commissioned this back in September of last year from Drakius, and I could not be happier with this model. Like, I love this model so stinking much, and the texture work on it I actually did myself. I'm super duper happy with how it came out. I like the textures, I like the normals, I like how much it really radiates Neffertiti energy. And at some point I'll make a physical tutorial that will describe how to use Substance Painter in and out, but for this particular video, due to a couple different reasons, I was kind of skimming through it faster than I probably should have for tutorial purposes, so I didn't quite cover as many little short snippet bases as I could have. At some point, I'll actually tackle a full tutorial, so consider this more of like a speed paint kind of deal. But I will get there eventually, and I will also get arm tracking eventually, so that I'm not just a flat T-posing derg that just kind of scoots around the space, you know? We'll get there. But I think I've done enough rambling for this intro, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and watch me paint a 3D model. Okie dokie. So the very first thing that I start off by doing is actually color swatching, which is why the colors are rapidly changing like this. Now, when I color swatch, I'm grabbing something off screen from the character's reference sheet so that I can pick them. And then the thing that I just put on is the fur brush texture, which I purchased from Gumroad, and I will link in the description of this video if you want to pick it up as well. I highly recommend it. Now, when you import the actual material itself, it covers the entire model and it's one uniform shape, texture, and direction. By messing around with the tiling and then coming in and hand painting with a light airbrush, I can control the exact shape, direction, and size of all the individual fur fibers, making it look much more organic and natural. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to do as I'm working on this model. I want her fur to look really nice and soft, just like her fursuit does, and it's definitely a challenge, I'm not gonna lie there. But it's something that I've learned more and more as I continue painting in Substance, and even though I had to speed up this video by a lot, you can still see a lot of the different progress that I go through as I'm laying down all the different colors. Gradients especially were something that took me quite a while to figure out how to do, because in Substance, you're given so many different tools to work with, and not all of those tools are going to work exactly the way you want them to. It was a lot of trial and error to try and figure out how exactly I was going to do this, but when I did figure it out, I found that by using the airbrush, turning the size of it absolutely massive, and then going through and turning the flow super duper low, by using my tablet pen, I can control the pressure exactly and be able to paint exactly what I want, as well as get the gradient looking nice, smooth, and natural. Using layers is also vitally important at this stage, because here this character has very defined little toe markings, and when you can't quite get into some of the little grooves, you'll see me go on the right-hand side over there where the texture is kind of squashed in the flat UVs. I particularly paint like this with more of the screen open because I've noticed sometimes a texture won't wrap exactly as it's supposed to on the model, and it tends to cause problems every so often. Like, I can't even begin to tell you that the first time I actually painted a model, it was not a fun experience at all. I didn't know anything about how to control the normals, I didn't know how to control like the texture differences, I didn't know anything about exporting textures, and like here where I'm messing around with the height map and the gloss and stuff, I didn't know anything like that, and there wasn't very many tutorials that explained it very clearly, so I had to learn just by trial and error, and that sucked. But when you start to figure out this program more and more, and you're able to fill in areas like that where I just use the UV fill to get that whole entire space, add a slight gradient at the back of the throat, and then I came in and painted some normals onto the flat roof of the mouth, and it really helps it look so much more defined and pretty, and that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to do more of. And eventually, when I make a tutorial on how to use this program, it's probably going to be a long video, like a solid hour at the very least. And it's going to be a long process, but I feel it'll be worth it in the end, because I really like painting these kind of models. I like seeing how things change over time, and it genuinely makes me really happy to see how this can go from a flat texture with just no shapes, no shading, no texture. It's a shiny rubber ball, and it turns into this really gorgeous model that's got all these details and is instantly recognizable. Like, as I was painting this one here, there was quite a long time looking at it where I was like, yeah, this doesn't really look like Madra. It doesn't really have her vibe. Like, I kind of get some of her markings in here, but I wasn't really seeing her character right up until I did this. The second I painted this lavender on her snoot and her underbelly, instantaneously started to look like Madra. And that's exactly what I love about this. Being able to take these flat models and paint and texture them so that they look exactly like the character and they're super recognizable even at a glance. Now, messing around with some of these other textures, like here in the eyes, you'll see me go through a bunch of different settings where I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want them to look. Madra also has heterochromic eyes, so finding a shading that was like between the two and still looked good as I painted her iris and pupil in there, it was definitely a challenge. But by following the UVs that exist in the eye, I could find the center and thus be able to define it nice and cleanly like you see I just did. But she has dragon eyes with her cool little slits in there, so I really wanted to go in and extra define that, because I feel like it's just such a small detail that really helps her character stand out. And as beautiful as the base textures for this model are, they weren't exactly what I was looking for in terms of this commission. And that's kind of why when a file comes with a Substance Painter file, it's great, don't get me wrong, but I much prefer to wrap my own textures and build my own bases like this, because this model does come with a beautiful Substance Painter file, but it's just not quite my style, and I think that's why I like painting from scratch rather than using a Substance Painter file. But if you're new to this kind of thing, oh please, by all means, make sure you get the Substance Painter files first, because they make it so much easier. Here, I'm just painting the last little few details and bits and bobs on her. Her tail was difficult because of how this model is shaped. Definitely easier than some of the other ones because it's one blocky shape itself. But when I painted the Rexonium model, oh, that one is so difficult to paint with how the fur is done on that one. And thankfully, this model is UV wrapped so that the tail is separate from the body, so I can just turn off the body and be able to get into all these little nooks and crannies and make sure everything lines up. I'll whip it all around, test it, and then la-da-dee-da! And there we go! Now she's all finished. The wonderful dragon fox Madra has been added to the worlds of virtual reality, and I am so excited to see what kind of shenanigans she gets up to. This was a model that I really liked painting. One, because Madra is a good friend of mine. Two, because her character design is really, really pretty with the orange and purple contrast. I love how it looks, it's fun, and it makes me want to paint even more models like that. And it's really cool to see how much it still looks like her character, even though it's not a full custom model like this one is. Because full customs like this get very expensive very quickly, and finding an artist that has the kind of style you're looking for can be even more so difficult. I was very fortunate with how Drakius brought this model to life. I think that they did an absolutely incredible job with it, and I'm super duper happy with the end result. It's definitely something that I would recommend people start by just painting models first and see if it's even your kind of shtick. It's not for everybody, and if you're looking at getting into VTubing and things like that, full 3D VTuber models can be rather pricey, whereas if you go through the effort to learn how to set these up yourself, paint your own model, you can do quite a lot of significantly cool stuff with this. Little shout out here, well, I guess big shout out, because without Cade's tutorials, I would not have known how to do any of this kind of VRM setup stuff. It was super tricky for me to figure out, but Cade made it very easy to understand, so I definitely recommend going and checking out their channel. I will put a little pin somewhere up here so that you can go check it out and check out their channel, because it's amazing, and they make all kinds of great tutorials for people who are looking to get more into virtual reality content, VTubing, 3D model painting and sculpting and stuff like that, and just overall Cade is a great person, and y'all should go support them because it's awesome. And before I wrap up the rest of this video, there's one more little thing that I did want to go over, and that being my Patreon. I am currently completely working on overhauling and rebuilding my entire Patreon from the ground up. I want to start producing content for Patreon that is more inclusive for everyone and shows a lot more of the kind of content that I create behind the scenes. I have such a difficult time when I create anything to wait, not post everything all at the same time, and then share things to Patreon that Patreon should get exclusively, because they're the ones that are financially paying my bills and making it so that I am able to keep making things and creating content. So I need to completely overhaul how I'm posting content on there and get better about posting more frequently. I am so bad about posting frequently on Patreon, and I need to get better at that because I'm really, really bad at it. So if you've stuck with me this long and you've given me this opportunity to grow and understand how Patreon works, thank you so much. I really can't express in words alone how much I appreciate that. But I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it as I try and learn and figure out how all this stuff works. So I'm just going to wrap it up and say that I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day and a fantastic life.